Madam President, few people can say they've had the same range of experiences and successes in life as Senator Jim Bunning. In fact, there isn't even another major leaguer who can say he struck out Ted Williams 3 times in one game. And Jim accomplished that notable feat in just his second year in the majors. 39 years after that, he'd become the only member of the Baseball Hall of Fame to serve in the U.S. Congress. For the past 12 years, I've been honored to work alongside this remarkable American here in the Senate. We followed different paths in life, but we share a deep love for Kentucky and its people. It's been my honor over the years to have worked closely with Jim to advance our common goals. So today I'd like to say a few words about my good friend as we honor his remarkable life and his remarkable service. Jim was born and raised in Southgate, Kentucky, and it wouldn't surprise anybody to learn that he excelled in school and in sports growing up. He played baseball as a teenager at St. Xavier High School in Cincinnati, but it was for his skills as a basketball player that would earn him an athletic scholarship to Xavier University. Baseball interrupted his college education, but at his father's insistence, Jim would return to Xavier and earn a degree in economics that served him well in Congress over the years. He entered the majors in 1955, and over the course of a storied 17-year career, he would play for the Detroit Tigers, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Pittsburgh Pirates, and the Los Angeles Dodgers. Jim is a pretty imposing force at committee hearings, just ask Chairman Bernanke. But he was a dominating presence on the mound long before that. At 6'4", he was a hard-throwing side armor who would tumble off the mound with every pitch he threw. By the end of his career, Jim could boast that he was the first major league pitcher to win 100 games, rack up 1,000 strikeouts, and throw no-hitters in both leagues. He finished with an impressive 224 wins, 184 losses, 2,855 strikeouts, and a 3.27 ERA. The career stats that would earn him a spot in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Jim's 2 greatest pitching achievements were his no-hitter in 1958 and the perfect game he threw on Father's Day, 1964, a feat that has only been accomplished 20 times in baseball history. Another little-known feat was Jim's so-called immaculate inning in 1959, when he struck out 3 Red Sox on 9 pitches, a feat that's only been achieved 43 other times in baseball history. Around here we joke that Jim likes to throw the high, hard ones, but he developed the skill early. Over a 4-year period with the Phillies, Jim hit more opposing batters with pitches than any other pitcher in the league. In fact, over a 17-year career, he plunked 160 batters, or nearly 10 batters a year, making him the 13th most dangerous pitcher of all time, ahead of such other well-known headhunters as Roger Clemens, Nolan Ryan, and Don Drysdale. Jim's never been afraid of a little chin music, and he brought that same competitive mentality to his life in public service. After baseball, public service seemed like a logical choice. It was Jim's turn to give back. Give back is exactly what he did. And when Jim walks out of this chamber for the last time at the end of this session, he'll be able to say with justifiable pride that he's given 33 years of his life to public service and to Kentucky. Over those 3 decades, Jim has served in all levels of government, from the Fort Thomas City Council to the Kentucky State Senate, to both chambers in this building, 12 years in the House and 12 in the Senate. He has dedicated his life to serving the people of Kentucky, and Kentuckians are grateful for his service. In the House, he made a name for himself, among other things, by working tirelessly to strengthen and protect Social Security as chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee Subcommittee on Social Security. And then in 1998, he decided to make a run at the U.S. Senate seat, which at the time was held by Wendell Ford. He turned out to be a close election, but once he arrived in the Senate, Jim set out to become one of the hardest working and most influential members of this chamber. He's been a staunch social and fiscal conservative and a budget hawk who for years has sounded the alarm on the kind of concerns about spending and debt that drove so many Americans to the polls last month. Jim spoke for many Americans when he said in a recent statement that being a grandfather to many, he worries that future generations will be saddled by the poor decisions that are being made today. For the first time in my life, he said, I question if my grandchildren will have the same opportunities that I had. One particular issue that's been close to Jim's heart is the issue of adoption. In 2001, Jim introduced legislation to make adopting more affordable for American families. And in 2007, he introduced legislation to make those tax incentives permanent. And of course, if there ever was a controversial issue regarding the national pastime on Capitol Hill, Jim was right at the forefront, including the 2005 hearings related to steroid use in baseball. In one memorable exchange from that hearing, Jim offered the following testimony from his own experience as a player. This is what he had to say. He said, Mr. Chairman, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but I remember players didn't get better as they got older. We all got worse. When I played with Hank Aaron and Willie Mays and Ted Williams, they didn't put on 40 pounds to bulk up their careers, and they didn't hit more homers in their late 30s than they did in their late 20s. It was just this kind of straightforward, common-sense approach to issues that has won Jim a legion of admirers, not only on the baseball diamond, but off it as well. And on this issue in particular, Jim's passion and personal perspective helped shed light not only on the dangers of steroid use at the professional level, but on the growing steroid epidemic among young athletes at all levels. Despite his high profile, Jim never forgot about the issues that mattered most to his constituents back home. He's been a staunch supporter of clean coal technologies as an effective, efficient way to use coal, improve our environment, and bring jobs to Kentucky. Another issue that was extremely important to all Kentuckians was the failed cleanup of radioactive contamination that was found in the drinking water wells near residences at the Department of Energy's uranium enrichment plant in Paducah, Kentucky in 1988. In 2004, Jim harshly criticized the DOE's cleanup efforts, as well as called several hearings on Capitol Hill to draw attention to DOE's failure to compensate many workers that had been stricken with radiation-related diseases. In every issue he's taken on, whether national, statewide, or local, Jim has been a man of principle from start to finish. He stayed true to himself, and in a truly remarkable life, he's got a lot to be proud of. But if you were to ask Jim to list his greatest achievement, I don't think he'd say it was his election to the U.S. Senate or his induction into the Hall of Fame. They'd both come in a distant second and third to the day he married his high school sweetheart, Mary. Jim and Mary still live in northern Kentucky, where they grew up. They've been married for nearly 60 years. Together, they've raised 9 children, and they enjoy nothing more than spending time with the next generation of Bunnings, which the last time I checked included 35 grandchildren and 5 great-grandchildren. Jim will tell you there's no secret to his success. He's happy to give all the credit to Mary. As he put it in his Hall of Fame induction speech, she's his rock. Today, we honor and pay tribute to our friend and colleague of more than 3 decades of public service. Jim will be remembered for his 2 Hall of Fame-worthy careers, for his example of principled leadership, for his devotion to God, country, and family. On behalf of myself and the entire Senate family, we thank Senator Bunning for his service, and we wish him best in the next chapter of his life. I yield the floor.
Madam President.
Senator from Arizona.
Madam President, I'd like to join Senator McConnell in a tribute to my friend and colleague, Jim Bunning. Jim and I came into the House of Representatives